All right, so let's get this installation kicked off because it sucks getting in the Gen 1 with no camera because I'm so used to it being in the Gen 2 that the rear view visibility is just night and day difference. So yeah, let's get over to the table here. So we have everything sprawled out. We're going to just give you guys a little breakdown of what we're installing just to show you that this thing is not really that daunting to install. So right off the bat, we have the 12-inch mirror. On the back here, that's going to be the 4K camera. And there's just a few connections that you're going to end up making after this thing's installed. That's going to be your USB-C input, which is just going to be the powering to the device. You've got your memory card, which it comes with a 64 gigabyte. You're going to be able to expand that up to a 256 gig. This little spot here is going to be the audio video input, which is going to be for the rear camera. And this bigger one, which is a 3.5 millimeter jack, that's going to be for the GPS antenna as well. Super easy to install. We have the rear view camera right here, and this little adapter that I have on here is what's going to make it so you can put this on your rear window. You're going to see that I only have one bolt. These screws that it comes with that adapts to this metal piece, the screws are just a little too big to make it through there. I just have one screw through the center. If you want to, you could always just drill that out. If you wanted to do two screws, just the one's going to be fine enough. And you'll just bend this over, and you can see now we have just a little lip to put this on the back window. And you're going to have two options for powering this. It's going to come with the 12-volt DC auxiliary cord. This option's good if you don't want to do the hardwire kit. Depending on your car's make and model, you might end up having to unplug this every time, or otherwise the camera is just going to stay on the whole time. The hardwire kit is just the preferred method. So on this little harness here, you're going to have your USB-C, which is going to plug in to the top up here. And you're going to just have three little connections you need to do to give this thing power. You're going to see the one with the gold here is going to be for ground, and then you're going to have a red wire and a yellow wire, and one of these fuse taps are going to plug into this. Obviously the yellows are going to go with the yellow, the red's going to go with the red. Red is going to be accessory power, yellow is going to be your constant battery power. And the reason why you want two of these is accessory is what's going to turn this thing on when you actually turn your truck on, but what the battery power does is, say this thing's off, say you're parked somewhere, but say you get hit. In the event that it gets hit, there's like a sensor in this. It comes on, starts recording automatically, and then that way, if somebody or someone hits your car, it records whatever's happening and it locks that footage. Now you're probably asking yourself which fuse tap you need to use. It comes with 4 different types because obviously it's just a universal kit. On the Gen 2 Raptor, my 2019, I ended up using this one here, which is considered a micro. The Gen 1 Raptor or the 12th Gen F150s, they don't use the micro. They actually use an ATM fuse. Now here's the problem, and I see lots and lots of people with this problem, and no one really had a solution for it. This fuse here is out of the Gen 1 Raptor, which it's a 2013. This is considered a mini low-profile ATM fuse. And you can just see that it's just a very small guy. The problem is, say you grab this here, is the fuse tap, which is a mini low-profile fuse tap. But because this is so big and bulky, you can't actually plug this into your fuse panel and make it work. There's just no way. You can't even cut this or trim it. It's just not going to work because this is just too big to plug in the slot that this came out of. So what you're actually going to end up doing is you can still use these fuse taps. You're just going to end up switching to this one, which is still an ATM, but it's just the regular ATM. So you can see it's the exact same size as the low profile. This plugs into your fuse panel perfectly fine. I see a lot of people ended up just actually splicing into wires and wiring it themselves, when really all they needed to switch to was an ATM. So what you'll do is now this fuse, which is a mini low profile, won't fit in this slot. So that's why I have a full-on ATM kit. Now you'll just be putting a regular ATM fuse in this replacement. So you'll be getting rid of the low profile. But once you pull this fuse out of the truck, it now needs to get reinstalled. And you're going to want to make sure it's installed to the one closest to the prongs. That's where the one that was in the truck goes. Your new fuse, which it comes with these, you're going to end up putting it in line with the wire. And that's what's going to feed the power to the dash cam. And I'll show you guys how we're going to figure out where we're going to put the location. And these are technically directional when you install these in your fuse panel. But I'm going to show you guys the process and make sure we do it correctly. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to get this guy installed, which takes a whopping 2 seconds with the little rubber pieces it comes with. As far as placement goes, I would just recommend getting this part of your mirror butted up to that. So that way it's over as far as possibly can be. and then you can adjust it once you're on and everything. And I'll give you guys a little pro tip on what really helps on the adjustment for this. Now we just have 3 things to hook up to it: GPS antenna, rear view camera, and our power, of course. Just to show you guys real quick, in the Gen 2, I have the rear view camera mounted right up top here. So it's just double-sided taped onto this plastic piece, and I just have it so it's not interfering with the black lines in the back of the window. And then I just have the wire ran down through this plastic piece here. Now for the rear view camera, we're gonna try to get this thing up as high as possible. The Gen 2 Raptor, we mounted it on this side because the way the sliding window goes, on the Gen 2, it slides to that way. On this guy, it slides to this way. So that means we're gonna stick the camera over here, and we're basically gonna try to get it up as high as possible, which right there is probably gonna be a good spot. Should be out of the way of your black line, which is part of your defrost. So that's the main goal here, is wanting to make sure the camera is not in line with the defrost lines. I went ahead and just put a little isopropyl, and I'm basically just cleaning this upper black part. There's a little seal right here on the side of the window. I'm basically gonna get it to where this bracket that's gonna double side tape is gonna butt up right next to it. And I think if I get it about as high as I possibly can in there, we should be pretty good. And don't worry about having the adjustment 100% on, because once this is good and you're out of the view of this black line, you can adjust the camera from the actual mirror itself. Just to give you guys a little closer view, you can see that I have this piece that's double-sided taped. It's just above the black line here, goes in line with that seal, and it's out of the view from your defrost line. So it's a perfect spot. So now what we'll do is we're gonna grab the adapter harness. We're now gonna run this down this trim here. And we're gonna come out through here, down this seal, and I'll show you guys the rest. This is the extension harness that's gonna go from the rear camera up to the 12-inch mirror. This right here is what plugs into the camera. And you're gonna see this red wire. Now this red wire, I'm not gonna run it, just because this is the reverse signal wire. And what this does is, once it gets a reverse signal, it's going to show those lines, you know, the backup lines that a lot of the newer vehicles have. Since this truck already has reverse lines with the factory backup camera, I just don't really feel the need to tap this and get extra lines. So we're just going to actually tuck this back when we run it. Since the headrest has kind of a gap up here, the wire's just not going to hold itself up in here. So the kit does come with these little plastic clips. They got double-sided tape on them. Obviously, the side that has the open end, you want it to face towards the top. I went ahead and just did 3 of them. Now we can just lock this in. Keeps the wire looking a little cleaner. But for the most part, you could probably almost tuck this in by hand. If you can't, there's a plastic spudger that comes in the kit that you can use to kind of pry it down in as well. That plastic piece that connects the harness to the camera, I just pulled this back, got it tucked in there. So now, if you want, I wouldn't worry about running the red wire down. We're just going to take the red wire and tuck it back behind here. And basically now just start going by hand, and you can tuck this through very easily. So the red wire, let's just take it, just kind of bunch it up as neatly as we can. Once you have it bunched up, kind of take this excess to use it to kind of just keep it all in place. Since we ran the camera on the Gen 2 Raptor on the driver's side, it just made sense to route the wire on the driver's side. So we're literally doing the exact same thing, but on the passenger side, since our camera is technically on the passenger side. So we came down this door seal here, and we're popped out right down here. We're just going to tuck the rest of this under this seal. And if you pop this up enough, you should be able to kind of see where you can guide this through to get it out of the way where this thing pushes down and locks in. Basically just lift up on this end and this end just to kind of get this up enough, and you can get this tucked without actually taking the whole plastic piece off. Now since we're popped out here, we're just going to go down this plastic trim here. We're not going to go up the door seal here. So let's go ahead and get this tucked and get our way up to the front. Basically, we have so much excess, but what you want to do is now we're going to basically plug this in, start tucking it in up here first to run it down. That way we take all of the slack and it ends up right here, and we can just coil it up nice and pretty. You should be able to just pull it down by your fingers just to get enough room to tuck that wire up, and it should just hold up in there. With it being tucked under the headliner, just going to come through and we're going to run it down. Now you can see we have quite a bit of slack left over that needs to get hidden under here. Let's just go ahead and pop this whole thing off. It comes off pretty easily. Just use a little force and it'll come undone. After removing that plastic piece, I need to hit this with the vacuum, which kind of normal. So anyway, I finished off running down all the way until here, and then basically behind this metal bracket, because that's what the plastic piece pushes into and locks into. So I ran the wire. I just coiled up bunches of sections because there's a lot of wire. So I coiled up small sections about that wide right here, and then from here to here, you can see I coiled up longer sections, and then I finished it off right in here, and then it's just going up this seal and coming out into there. So basically just tuck this away nice and neatly and get it behind these metal brackets, because that's where the plastic is going to push into and lock into outside of those positions as well. So now the rear camera's good. We've taken all the slack out of it. We just need to take this kick panel apart. So you'll just grab from the outside here. It just swings open. Make sure you leave this part open. Just undo it from the bottom first. What I did, I kind of broke it free, and now you can see it's loose. And then just kind of pull it back and to the left a little. And then up here, use two hands, it comes free. But since somebody used just a self-tapper for a ground right here on the chassis, I could potentially use this, but I'm not going to. I think what I'm going to do is there is a main grounding bolt right above this plastic piece. It's an 8mm, and that's what we're going to ground into, just because it's going to be a lot better of a ground than that, just because that's on paint. We're just going to do the exact same thing that we did with the rear camera, and we're just going to get it routed up here, plug it in first, and get this tucked under the headliner. Now we've got the Hardwire kit and the rear camera all tucked away, and the Hardwire kit has just landed right down here. Not too much slack left over, but just the perfect amount. Let's go ahead and take the GPS antenna and just plug it in. We're gonna run it, and some people opt to put it up in this lower corner. You can do that, but I'm just gonna do it like I did on my Gen 2 Raptor, and I basically just stuck it right here. I'm just gonna hit this with a little isopropyl just to kind of clean it real quick. Now I'm just gonna take a few zip ties and zip tie these 3 wires we ran to the main harness that comes to the factory mirror. Now we've got this all zip tied nice and neat, all right up in here through the headliner. This is gonna be from the GPS antenna, which you can see is over here. So we're gonna just finish off up here, and we're gonna tuck the rest of the excess slack into this. We've got our handy dandy owner's manual. We just need to go through and pick a couple spots where we're gonna steal power from down in that fuse panel. And we know we're trying to utilize basically fuses 11, 12, 22, basically the ones below this relay 49. So we're gonna go through and see what these fuses are. And we're also gonna wanna make sure that one of these are actually accessory and one of these are actually a constant battery. That's where this circuit tester is going to come into play, because we want to make sure this thing is 100% correct. The plan of attack is we're going to use spot 41, which is passenger airbag deactivation indicator upfitter switch. This should be an accessory power, so that's going to be for our red guy. So the purple fuse is what's going to come in your Hardwire kit. It goes on the outside in line with the wire. And then the fuse that you're going to end up pulling out and replacing now is going to be a 7.5 amp fuse, which I pulled from our little kit over here, since you need to have the newer ones like I said. So that should get us accessory power. Then we're going to need battery power. And for constant battery power, we're going to use spot 12. It's a 15 amp fuse. That's interior lighting, puddle lamps, backlighting, cargo lamp. So we have the 15 amp fuse towards the prongs, and then the purple fuse is going to be, I believe it's a 3 amp for the dash camera itself, which is in line with this wire. So let's take this circuit tester and make sure that these are in fact, one's an accessory and one is constant battery power. Okay, so right now the truck is off, and fuse spot number 41 is going to be right here. It's a 7.5 amp fuse. So we're just going to check on each side of the fuse. There's just a little spot to check it with the circuit tester. No power. No power. So you're going to want to check it on both sides to see. So that tells us right there that as long as this fuse isn't blown, this should be an accessory fuse, which is going to be perfect. And then if we jump over here to fuse number 12, it's going to be this 15 amp fuse right below these two 10s. So this should be a constant battery power. So with no key ignition on, we should be able to test this and it should light up. And you can see that we have power with the truck off. So now we know that fuse 41 is going to be an accessory fuse. Fuse 12 is going to be our constant battery. Now we just need to find out which side is the hot side to make sure that we plug in our fuse taps the correct way. The way we're going to do that is we're going to pull out each fuse. And now we'll put the truck in accessory. And with the truck in accessory mode right now, we're going to check each side of the metal contacts that the fuse would go into just to see what side's the hot side. So it's already looking like fuse 41. The hot side is actually towards the inside of the fuse panel. So it's not the outer side. And then fuse 12, check it. And it's actually coming to the inside as well. So they're not the same direction, which is good to know because we want to know where our power's coming in, not going out. Now that we have two dedicated spots that we know are for sure going to work for this, red's going to be the accessory one, which is fuse 41. Yellow's going to be the constant battery power, which is going to be fuse number 12. And the way this works is, since we were checking to see where our power comes in on the metal contacts, that's what decides which way this goes. So the way these work is, power needs to come in on the very far outside. So we know main power comes in here on these, and we want to make sure that's lined up. Based off where the power's coming in, that means this fuse tap, the fuses are going to be pointed downwards on fuse 41. So we'll click that in. And since fuse 12, the power was coming towards the inside, that means we're going to actually have this one facing up. So that is the correct orientation that you should install these if you're utilizing the same two that I am. The next problem is the cover that it comes with. You just can't get this thing back on with the way these fuse taps are. So I think what I'm going to do for right now, I'm just going to opt to leave this off and just keep it in my glove box for the time being, just because the Gen 2 doesn't really have a fuse cover on it like this. So I think we're just going to put it up in here because I could probably customize this and make it work, but for right now, I'm not too worried about it. The moment of truth. Okay, so everything's good with the camera. I will say it does seem a little darker than my Gen 2, and that's because of the window tint that this has. And what a lot of people have been doing online is they said the basic workaround for them is they just take a little X-Acto knife and they cut a little circle out where the camera, peeks out to. So that's about the only way outside of externally mounting the camera. To me, keeping the camera inside the truck is just a lot easier. So I think what I'll do when I get home is I'm going to take a little X-Acto knife and I'm going to cut just a little piece of tin out. Just that way it's a little brighter. It's manageable, but I think if I cut just a little piece out, it'll be a lot better. Right out of the box, we're going to need to adjust our time. We're going to switch this to miles per hour. You can already see the red light blinking, so that just shows you right there that the camera is currently recording, which it's always recording the minute it turns on. Just tap the screen anywhere. This brings up a few shortcuts. This is going to turn recording on and off. This next one's going to be to take a picture, and you hear it make the noise. This little lock icon, this is to lock the footage. So what happens is, this is a 64 gigabyte memory card. Once it fills up, it starts overwriting that footage, which is pretty normal. But if you want to lock that footage in the event something's going on, just hit the lock button. You're going to see a green, kind of yellow green light come on. That means this is locked footage. Once it's done, and whatever you have it set to right now, I believe factory, it's set to 1 minute intervals. So it's going to record for 1 minute and switch back to regular. But you can click the lock button again and cancel that. This right here, the microphone, this turns on and off the internal recordings. If you don't want your voice to be recorded or anything like that, shut that off. And then your camera views, right now we're set to the rear view camera. There's two ways to switch. You can swipe. That gives you the split view, the rear camera, the front camera. This is going to be the front camera, back camera. And if you don't want to swipe, you can just hit this. And that does the same exact thing. Those are just the little shortcuts. They go away after a second. Hit the home button. This is going to bring up all your settings. If you go to recording, that's going to take you back to your main page. So go back to home. Smart driving. This is going to enable like sensors. So when you're driving and it's sensing other cars around you, a lot of newer cars have this technology, but it does have this. I'm not going to turn any of it on because once you do, It's going to tell you your resolution changed to 2.5K. None of these really appeal to me. You're going to lose a little quality on the camera, so it just doesn't make sense to me to run these. Hit the back button. Playback is obviously going to be able to play back any footage that you've recorded. There's also an app that you can download, and it's in the instruction manual on how to set up the app to go through all of your footage, or if you want to download some of it to your phone. Driving settings, here's where we're going to do a little setup. There isn't tons that you have to change on this. Resolution 4K, loop recording, I just set mine to 2. It's just kind of like a preference, I guess, but I just think 2 minutes is a good in-between since there's 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute. Time-lapse, I have it shut off. If you want to run time-lapse, you have to have the Hardwire kit installed. Record audio, it's turned off since I turned it off. G-sensor, I'm going to leave the G-sensor turned off. Parking guard, that's for in the event that this vehicle gets hit while it's parked. Then this screen's going to automatically turn on, start recording, and it's going to be locked footage. We're going to set ours to middle. GPS stamp, we're going to leave that on. Back camera mirror, we're just going to leave that video positive image. So we'll go back, system settings, and volume, I generally turn it down to in like the 50 range. For the time, what we need to do is right now we are off by a day. So we need to also change the actual time itself. So if we go to time zone, it says +8. So we're actually 2 hours off. So we're going to switch it to +6. So that should now put us now to the correct time. Then we're going to come up to date time. And you can change the format as well. I wouldn't change the time in here. I would make sure it's correct in the time zone itself. So for the date, let's drop this down to the 17th, and that should switch us to a Monday. Speed calibration. So this does have a digital speedometer. We're going to go in, change the speed unit to miles per hour. And then calibration. I don't have a digital gauge cluster in here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to download an app on my phone, see how fast I'm going off of GPS, and then you can just kind of fine-tune that with plus or minuses for your calibration. And now we're set up. We have our miles per hour on the screen, and now the date is correct, and it'll save this date even when it shuts off. The other thing you can do on the fly is if you're on the right hand side of the screen, going up and down, adjust the brightness of the screen. You're just always going to basically want to leave it as bright as possible. And then if you're over on the left hand side, going up and down, this is adjusting the rear view camera. I like to keep it to where I can see just a little bit of the truck bed, and I think that's perfect. And then once you have the camera installed, you might have to move it left or right, just to kind of get this so it's basically center in this screen, and then it's perfect. I just checked my speed with the GPS app on my phone, and we didn't actually have to do any sort of offset in the calibration, so it's basically spot on. The main thing that I love with this camera is the visibility I get out of the rear view camera. So you can see this car coming on us. I mean, when they're up here, that's the side of your truck, so you see them very well in your blind spot. So to me, just the added visibility of what's going on behind me, plus the blind spot, this thing's a no-brainer. Say you don't want to use it with the camera, just hit the power button, shuts it off. Now it's just a regular mirror. But just a little pro tip, if you set this thing up to where you would use your regular mirror and then you turn it on, that's when you're going to get a lot of glare from the rear window. So what you're going to want to end up do is just point this down just a little bit, and all of that glare from your rear window is going to be completely gone. But that's all I got for today, guys. Just a little simple installation. And it's pretty much the same on the Gen 2 Raptor or the 2015 and up F150. The only difference is the rear view camera goes on the driver's side, and we just routed everything down the driver's side rather than the passenger. I'll put a link down below where you guys can pick this up from my website, and then if you guys have any issues, just get a hold of me. But also too, if you guys pick this up and you are putting it in a 1st Gen Raptor or the 12th Gen F150, just shoot me an email and let me know when you buy it, and I'll throw in some fuses for you. So that's a wrap on the dash cam install. If you guys got questions, you know what to do. Peace.